And I want to begin by talking about the November update plan. As many of you know, we have to file a budget 2 years in the making, and in November we have to do the necessary adjustments. That's why we have Zaheer that's here today to have these conversations about the decisions we had to make. And this team that's up here now, this was a real tough exercise. After doing pegs several times, 3% pegs, then we had to go back to the table and do 5% pegs and find efficiency. In all of our agencies, it was extremely challenging to do so. And when you look at the fact that the tax revenue that's coming in is not at the rate that we would like, you looked at we had to settle union contracts where so many men and women were held without their union contracts being settled. You just think of the ferry boat workers and operators, 13 years they waited for a union contract. Our police was several years late. You look at what we did with all of our union employees, over 300,000 employees, we gave them a fair salary so that they could afford to live in the city that they're working for. And then when you look at the sunsetting of COVID, a lot of people didn't realize that money was not permanent. It was sunsetting, and there was too much that was put into permanent policies and money that was not permanent. And lastly, the chunk of the asylum seekers. We was saddled with picking up the cost of the the asylum seekers. We're talking about defunding. Our national government defunded New York City. It's unbelievable when you look at this cost and what we are experiencing. I think last week, the week of the 11th, I believe, we had almost 3,000, and Deputy Mayor Williams-Ison could go into those numbers later, that came in. We're still getting a substantial number of people every week. It's not like we're saying, okay, you got to over 140,000, just resolve the 140,000 that you have. No, we are still getting in 1,000 each week. And so I made it clear over and over again, I'm going to support working people. I'm going to make sure that our city continues to be safe. And I'm going to make sure that we continue to attract businesses here so that we can continue to make sure our economy is strong. With all of the headwinds that we are facing on so many fronts, this body of professionals are continuing to do their job, and they're doing it appropriately. And so I know you New Yorkers are angry when they hear about these efficiency cuts. Well, you New Yorkers, I want you to know I'm angry also. I am angry that instead of doing a budget that I want, a budget that pours into services for our seniors, cleaning our streets, continue to build housing, putting support into our young people. Instead of doing that budget that I am excited about doing, we have to move in another direction and look at these very, very cost savings to continue to have our city operate and to abide by the law. We also are joined by Zach Isco, the commissioner at NYSEM, because we are dealing with a weather-heavy wind and rain starting later today and continuing into tomorrow. So if there are any questions, he'll be able to answer that as well. We're expecting 1 to 2 inches of rain beginning later this afternoon around 4 p.m. Minor flooding in low-lying and poor drainage areas possible. Wind gusts are expected to reach 30 to 40 miles per hour citywide, with the possibility of up to 45 miles per hour winds along southern coastlines overnight and Tuesday. So NYSEM and the team already put in place a travel advisory in effect today through tomorrow, Wednesday, and everyone should wear extra layers and be precaution as they move about. Last night we had a code blue in effect that expired at 8 a.m. This morning, but it will be in effect again tomorrow, tonight, if the temperature drops below 32 degrees. But again, we want to continue to say we want New Yorkers to sign up for Notify NYC to stay informed on the latest weather information. More and more people are signing up, but we want to reach those neighborhood and communities that historically, based on our analysis, are not really signing up as much as they should, and we want to do everything as possible to get them engaged because it's a great way of notifying New Yorkers. First Deputy Mayor Wright did an analysis of who's actually signing up and who's participating, and we're noticing that we need to make it more citywide to get people more in the interaction. And so, Fabian, I'll turn it over to you, and any questions?
Great, thank you. We'll take some questions. Just want to raise your hands, and we'll call and we'll get started.
Masha.
How you doing, Mr.
How are
Mayor?
you?
So, your budget director has sent another memo to agencies about the next round of cuts that take effect in January. And what he's calling for is a 20% cut in the amount of money you're gonna spend on migrants. But what he notes is that the state has told you, he says, that they're no longer gonna be giving you money for shelter. They're gonna focus on targeted programs like legal expenses and things like that. So I ask you, if you're going to do the cut and you're not gonna get any money from the state to help you house people, are you going to have to close some of the shelters, some of the expensive hotels you're using in favor of the bigger congregate shelters because you simply don't have the room? And the second part of that question is, will we see people sleeping on the street?
Our desire, and Jack will give you his fiscal analysis, our desire has always been in a layer approach. The first, most important layer is not to have children and families sleeping on the street. That has been my number one concern. Second layer is not to have everyday people sleeping on the street. I have done too much in the last 20-something months of removing the unsightliness of tents and encampments. We did it in record time through the work of Deputy Mayor Williams-Isons and her coordination, and that is continuing to be our desire. But I've made it clear, after over 140,000 migrants and asylum seekers, of course, that is just continuing to increase. Thousands are still coming in each week. The visible signs of this crisis is going to start to show itself. And our goal is to not have people sleeping on the streets. And you actually, believe it or not, there are migrant and asylum seekers who are saying, we want to sleep on the streets. And people have a right to do so. We need to be clear on that. In New York City, because of the city council's action, people have a right to sleep on the streets that we cannot stop. And I want New Yorkers to understand that. Our goal is to not have people sleep on the street. We don't want to turn into those cities that are displaying that. Jock, you want to talk about?
You didn't answer the second part of the question, which is, are you gonna have to close some of the hotels?
That is for, every day there is a level of maneuvering that we have to do to deal with the flow of migrants and asylum seekers here. Nothing is off the table, nothing. Every day, we thought we were going headed back south. In the numbers, we thought we were gonna be dealing with 2,400, 2,000. I was just told that we were up to 3,000. Some weeks we go up to 4,000. So it is challenging to tell you what the actions are when we don't even know the flow that we're getting. So everything is on the table. Chuck, you want to talk about the?
Yes, like you indicated, Mayor, the governor has indicated to us about 3 weeks ago in a memo issued by the state budget director that the state will be moving away from funding shelter into funding things such as job placement and legal services. But moving away from the more costly item than. So what we've been working to know exactly how we're going to manage this going forward, because we are basing our assumptions, our plan on the assumption that we'll get a third of the funding from the state. Okay, so if the state were to move away from that commitment that they made to us last year, that means we're going to have to take some more drastic actions, because that would open up the budget gap. But however, yesterday the governor gave some clear indication that that she'll be working with her staff, okay, to see what she can do to provide some kind of assistance and relief to the state. So we're hoping that we don't have to get there, because we're expecting to get more assistance from the state. Now, Nash has committed again to provide us some assistance. So therefore, we're trying to, as best as we can, not to take any more drastic action than we need to do.
Mike, what's your favorite balloon at the Thanksgiving?
What's that?
What's your favorite balloon?
Oh, I'm not familiar. I have lived in Belize now. Maybe Papa Smurf. I have no idea. So I get a question about your trips to Turkey, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
You said you traveled there 6 or 7 times. From what I could discern, COIB records show you took 2 trips there. There's, I think, an additional one to Azerbaijan. And it's been reported you traveled there once with your son Jordan. So, you know, in the interest of transparency, wanted to ask you if you could share when you traveled to Turkey on those other trips, who paid for those trips, and the purpose of each visit. And on a related note, but separate, regarding Rana Abasova, what role, if any, did she play in your 2021 campaign? And I think you might not answer this one, but who did she contact in City Hall? This might be for Lisa. After, you know, she allegedly, after her raid, you know, we've heard from a source that she contacted City Hall officials to ask them to delete text exchanges.
So let's peel it back in layers. We will give a complete list of our travel to Turkey. Jordan and I, actually, that was one of our stops. Jordan, my son, after graduating from college, we did a son-dad 21-day tour, a trip together. It was probably one of the most joyful times of my life to spend 21 days with my son. We went to several different countries. I think we did 2 or 3 days in Turkey, but we went to other different countries. The first time he traveled abroad with me at that level, and we'll give you the complete list. Many of those, I actually traveled to Turkey for the first time as a state senator. When I went over to Azerbaijan and to Baku with a Senate delegation. And actually, the first time I went was during Thanksgiving. We just picked up one day and said, you know, hey, let's go to Turkey. And I like Istanbul, I like Cappadocia, I like Antalya. And so we traveled several times there. But I think it's lost on people that, you know, to be able to reach the point that I was able to see the globe. I'm a kid from South Jamaica, Queens. I've been to Africa 7 times. I've been to Saudi Arabia, Jordan, you know, South Central America, Russia. I love travel. And, you know, this is an international city. Nothing brings me a greater joy than when I'm able to go to someone from Bolivia and say, I went to your country and I saw the Andes. When I can say, you know, hey, I've been to Israel 3 times. I travel. I believe in exploring the globe so I can become a better mayor, a better borough president, a better state senator by having a global view. Because New York City is an international city. And so someone wrote an article and said Eric went to 80 Turkish events. I must have went to 300 African events. You know, I'm an international mayor and I enjoy the excitement of an international city. And so some of those trips were personal. Every time we went personal, we paid. Some of the trips were governmental. We did sister city agreements, and we followed all the necessary procedures to do so. So we would give the list on what was the governmental trips that we took, but we followed the procedure every time because I believe in following the procedures.
Mayor, Mike, if it was a governmental trip and it was paid for by the government, the borough president's office would have that information. So you should check with the borough president's office because we don't, at City Hall, keep records from borough president.
We get a list of the personal trips to Turkey as well.
Maybe.
Kelly?
Hi, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to follow up on that question about the drastic cuts to migrant costs. I also wanted to ask you, In regards to your legal defense fund, you said that this isn't a distraction, but you started that legal defense fund. Seemingly, you have to get some money from donors to pay for your legal fees right now. And then my third question, there's been, when it comes to the receivership on Rikers Island, plaintiffs in the case filed formally to get the receivership to get city jails away from the city. I'm wondering, do you think that Rikers is too broken for the city to fix? There's no commissioner right now. Your thoughts on that?
You said no way?
There's no commissioner when it comes to leading the head of Rikers. Molina left, and I was wondering.
No, that's not true, and that was falsely reported, in every agency. First of all, let's be clear, in every agency, there is a deputy commissioner. And the natural ascension of positions is crucial in every agency. So even when there's a commissioner, there's an acting commissioner, someone is always in charge. And I don't believe that Rikers is beyond repair, and we want the job of repairing Rikers. We want that job, and what Molina has done, he has moved us into the right direction on decreasing some of the major indicators like violence, etc. When you look at the MMR report, you see what Molina has done, and many people have gone there. Even the elected officials have walked through and stated that we just see a noticeable difference in Rikers, and we want to continue that, and we're going to continue that. He's going to cycle into a new role, but at the same time, we're going to have someone there that's going to continue the great work that those men and women are doing in the Department of Corrections. That's a tough job. And I've been on Rikers Island more than any mayor in the history of this city. Last year at this time, I went to visit a young lady who gave birth to a child on Rikers Island. I've spent Thanksgiving with her, and so I believe it could be repaired. Now, to deal with the fund,
Mayor, do you want to just quickly, Deputy Mayor Banks seems to have something to add on the right.
Well, I mean, I've read that like 100 times that they have no commissioner. I've read it from people who've been quoted, who said it, who should have shown, I think, a high level of responsibility to check. Molina is the Department of Press Commissioner. He hasn't left one day, he hasn't left 1 minute, he hasn't even taken a vacation since it was reported. So report that. The second thing is that if we look at the indicators on which the monitor came in on the first place, every single one is in the right direction, completely in the right direction. Maybe we want to investigate that. Look at absenteeism with correctional officers. Look at fires, look at broken locks, look at assaults. They're all in the right direction. So when you hear those things say they're not in the right direction, I like to say we are. And the third thing, the question I have is that, show me a receivership. Point to one receivership, Mississippi, Alabama, Chicago. The receivership came in and they did a better job in that particular city. I would love to see that, because if there is one, I would love to be able to take a look at that particular issue here, because our job is to make sure the Rikers is operating as efficiently as we possibly can. So the answer to your question is that Lou never left. He never even took a day off. So the reporting, if things are being repeated overtime, it doesn't make it accurate. The accurate is he is a Department of Corrections Commissioner. He will be so until the mayor says that he's not.
I mean, this guy came in, the commissioner came in 20-something months. As long as I can remember, you will go back and Google how many press conferences as 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement I did about Rikers Island. Rikers Island was a mess. And in 22 months, all those indicators, as the deputy mayor stated, you saw Louis move in the right direction, change the atmosphere, partner with outside entities to provide services to the inmates under very difficult circumstances. The absentee rates among correction officers were through the roof. And look what he did. And I think he's a great public servant, and the next commissioner is going to continue the work that he's doing. And so to speak with could you ask me a question about the fund?
Mm-hmm.
New York has reached out to me, and they asked Eric, how can we help? And they wanted to donate to my campaign account, and I said, you can't use money from campaign account to pay for legal expenses. Our compliance attorney, based on a law that was passed by the city council, looked into the records, spoke to COIB. They told them the methodology that they could use to open up a legal trust. to pick up the cost of legal expenses. You know, we saw what happened with the former mayor. It was almost $1 million in legal fees he had. And so of everyday New Yorkers that reached out and said, we want to help you, Mayor, we made sure that it was done in a proper way. And I want to thank those New Yorkers. You know, I am just overwhelmed with gratitude of people who have watched my work all these years. And they're saying that, listen, we want to be with you during this period of time. And that's what New Yorkers are. And that's how that came about.
The drastic cuts with the migrant
We got
costs.
it. Kelly, I appreciate it, I want to keep sending people extra.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, happy early Thanksgiving.
Thanks, same to you. And it's Thanksgiving, folks, not thanks receiving. So give something.
I can give you two questions. One I know is a little dear to your heart, talking about Department of Education cuts. The $60 million for the food program, we know about healthy eating and how important that is and some important initiatives you brought. What is your understanding of what those cuts will mean? And then the 37,000 eliminated 3K and pre-K slots. Why, in your view, has more not been done to fill those slots? And would filling those slots not be a better budget solution because then you would get more money from the state and federal government?
Great question, great question. When we came in, the team looked at 3K, pre-K, and I spent a lot of personal time on this, because I was extremely frustrated that I didn't get the answers that I wanted. And I realized that what we were doing previously, under the previous administration, we were paying for seats, not children in seats. We were having a level of centers who were actually stating, we can fill 50 seats when they were only filling 10 seats, for example, but we were paying them for 50 seats. And what First Deputy Mayor Wright did and her team is that they looked at how do we properly align the seats so we can know where they're needed, because it was based on ages. You know, this is just not a one size fits all. And then we went even further we want to improve on the invoicing process because it's too labor intensive and very problematic. We were advancing centers who never got the number of seats, and they were saying, we're not even bother invoicing because you already paid us. It was just a real layer and layer of problems. So what we're saying to our city council member and partners, here's your council district, here's how many seats are open in your council district, let's go find these children so we can place them in the seats instead of just paying for empty seats.
So it's outreach and right sizing?
Right, outreach, right sizing, mobilizing, because too many children that should be in these seats are not in these seats, and we need to get them in the seats. So the DOE is playing a role, we're asking our city council, we're asking advocates, let's go find these children and get them in these seats.
And let me add, it's accountability, because as the mayor said, some of these entities were not sending in invoices, they were not giving us information. Now there is accountability, where they have to let us know, the seats are filled, these are the individuals in the seats, so we have accountability.
And on food, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead,
Yeah, just
Oh,
to
sorry.
clarify one point as well. Through the analysis that was done by the team, it's very important for everybody to know that there is a seat for every child who is eligible. And the right sizing is like, we can't pay for seats that are never gonna be used because the population and also, families want a certain time, they'll want full day or half day. So there was a lot of work that was done to make sure that the system is actually meeting the need, and that exists today.
There's about 7,000 seats that we were adjusting
Yeah,
last
I
year,
mean,
right?
yeah, we currently have 37,000 empty seats. So you can imagine, we're making difficult choices, okay, cutting PD, cutting sanitation, when we're paying for seats that are left empty. I mean, can you imagine? So we're taking a small portion of the seats because there is a misalignment of the supply and demand, because we built up the supply and without the demand. So therefore, we're trying to realign the supply and demand. That's what we're going through right now. But you have to look at this in the context of the choices that we have to make. And on top of that, the notion that we're gonna get funding for it from that's not true at all. Okay, this is being paid for out of the stimulus money. Okay, that is basically, we have a cliff, it's running out.
Right. And that's so, 'cause your question is such an important question. And number one, this is temporary money that the previous administration used for a permanent program. Then we were paying for empty seats without the real outreach to place children in the seats. We have over 30,000 empty seats. And so what people are saying to us, don't get rid of those 30,000 empty seats. Leave them and keep paying for them. During a time when, number one, the money's gonna run out. Number two, we don't even have the money anymore. But as the deputy mayor said, and as Ingrid stated, every child that wants a seat, we will place them in a seat. And so I think that when people do an analysis, what this administration did with a concept that was a good concept, but it was not operationalized, people are really going to see how we took these difficult steps to place children in seats. This symbolism of we have 3K and let's keep expanding it. I mean, that makes no sense. Expand something when you don't have children to put in the seat just so we have X number of seats. That's not how we're gonna operate. That's not how I'm going to use taxpayers' dollars. And the food program, listen, everyone knows what I feel about healthy eating, being proactive, placing good quality food in schools. It feeds the healthcare crises that our children, childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, we can go through the list. That's how tough these choices. The budget I would like to see is to make sure these children are getting the healthy food they need. And that's how painful this is. The initiative that we put in place to improve the lives of everyday working class people is being impacted right now. And DC needs to do its job.
Mr. Ray.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning.
Monica Radio Rampa. My question is, first, there's reports of increasing threat to New York and the city of New York. I want to ask you about that in terms of what's going on with Thanksgiving upcoming. And of course, it is related to the situation in the Middle East. That's what I mean. And the second, would you comment on the fact that NYPD encrypting radio communication discussion is going on, and what would be your position?
Yes. First, the threats, the deputy mayor and the commissioner and the whole team over at the NYPD and Deputy Commissioner Weiner, we have been monitoring these threats. We are clearly looking to be proactive with our partners. As you know, we have a joint terrorist task force in the city to focus on these threats and monitoring a lot of chatter that's out there. And when you think about it, we have over 300 protests that took place in the city. Some of them were side by side. And some of the violence you're seeing in other municipalities you did not see here. Hats off to Commissioner Caban and what his team has done. And we're gonna continue that omnipresence. We're gonna continue to coordinate with the New York State Intelligence Center to identify those threats. We know that after October 7th, there's been an increase in level of concerns, but we're on top of it. No one does it better than the NYPD and their partners to deal with some of the potential terrorist threats that we're facing. And so we're going to continue that. The second question was dealing with
the NYPD communication.
Yeah, the radio. The encryption of radios. People think that it's about preventing the press from hearing our comments. No, bad guys are listening to these channels. They know when we're responding. They know where we are. So we're going to find the right balance to make sure that people are allowed to stay on top of the actions of the police department. But we can't give a leg up to these bad guys that know when we are responding to jobs. They know they can listen to calls of service. They monitor themselves. So it's not so much the press is not concerned. It's that these bad guys are becoming more and more sophisticated. And when you are putting that communication out there, you're jeopardizing the safety of the public, you're just jeopardizing the safety of police officers, and we will find a proper balance to make sure we can do it appropriately.
Jake.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning.
A few weeks ago, following the FBI raid on the Open Your fundraiser, your campaign promised an extensive review of campaign documents and actions by campaign workers. Has that review uncovered any inappropriate action? by campaign workers, or any donations that might be problematic. And then I also just wanted to follow up on Mike's question, General Minister, about Rana Abasova. What was her role in your 2021 campaign? Who did she text on the morning of the raid? And can you confirm the reporting that she was in fact placed on leave?
My review, and the review from our compliance team continues to show what I've always felt and will continue to say. Our campaign follows the rules, and that's something I always tell them, follow the rules, follow the rules, follow the rules. And I'm going to continue to say that, and that's what our the preliminary review from our compliance team. I have a compliance attorney that looks over these records, and he has done an amazing job, and he's gonna continue to do so. And he will continue to review the records, but that's what we saw. And anything dealing with particularly the potential employee, I will turn it over to our counsel.
Yeah, so, as I previously said, we're not gonna do anything that impedes on SDNY's investigation. I said last week, I can guarantee that they don't want a pending investigation playing out in the press. I know that from personal experience. Look, here at City Hall, we've done everything by the book. We're not conducting the investigation, we're cooperating with it. And so, we're not gonna comment in response to the question that you asked.
Morgan?
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Just wondering, back to Kelly's question about the 20% migrant cuts. If you could go into detail exactly what would those cuts to migrant services look like, 20%? Also, the next round of budget cuts, why is NYPD, FDNY, and sanitation excluded? And then, have you set up another meeting with White House officials on the migrant crisis and just about the costs? Thank you.
Yeah, Jack will go into the analysis of the 20%, Jack or Ann, who's here. From the first view, FDNY, which is public safety, NYPD and sanitation. But if we have to, we're gonna have to go into them as well. Because this is going to continue to evolve. We sent out the letters for an additional PAG, 5% PAG. And based on the numbers that come in our analysis, everything is on the table. You know, we want to be clear on that. Everything is on the table. We don't want to do anything that's going to endanger public safety. That's the foundation that the city's built on. We have to be safe. You know, the thought of, you know, they were included in this PAG was a challenging one. It brought a great level of debate and conversation with the team that's here. But if need be, they will have to be included in the next round also if we can't get to the numbers that we want. Because by law, we have to balance the budget. Jock, you want to go into?
Yes, Mayor, the goal is to work, OMB will work with the Office of Asylum Seekers Operations, basically to come up with a plan in terms of how we going first to reduce the per diem costs, okay? That is looking at different service models to see, you know, what kind of services we're going to reduce, because we want to basically provide the same kind of services we provide to folks in the DHS system. So that's one aspect of the solution. Look at different staffing model, okay, to see. All of this is to basically geared toward trying to bring down the per diem costs. At the same time, we're exploring different exit strategies, okay? Whether it's 30 days seems to be working, 60 days seems to be working. So we're exploring this model and trying to expand them as quickly as possible.
And then the White House meeting?
We are in plans of scheduling a meeting with a group of clergy members that want to go to DC with me, and there are certain invitations that I've had in the next week or so that we're doing an analysis to make that determination. But we do want to thank our coalition and partners from Chicago, Denver, and others who have been part of this coalition. But I'm looking forward to getting to DC to have a real conversation around the impact of the migrant crisis on our city.
Mayor, if I could just add also to Morgan to that point, since last summer when the migrant crisis, when we saw it really explode here in New York City, the mayor's been down to DC to talk to both the White House and members of Congress 9 times. That's 9 conversations he had about every single time he talked about it. Even earlier this year, I remember we were at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and as the FEMA administrator and staff there, he's like, "Where's New York City's money?" Like, so these conversations we're having every single time that was there. Obviously, we want to have as many people in the coalition as possible, so that's what the mayor was talking about, hopefully organizing with other cities as quickly as we can.
How are you?
You talked really briefly about street homelessness earlier. I was wondering, is the city ever gonna give out the data about people being moved off the streets into hospitals and services? Like, do we have a timeline on that?
I'm sorry, on what?
People being moved off the street for, like, street homelessness in the subways, into hospitals and for services. And I know there was talk about data for that earlier in the year.
You start.
So, well, first for the subway safety plan, remember there was 2 pieces of it. It was homelessness and those that are having severe mental illness on the subways. The homelessness piece, it was over 6,000 people, I believe, that had already gone into shelter from last February, it was mid-February last year through currently or so. The mental health piece of it, we announced last year.
November this time.
Right, and so it's end of this month, I believe, is the 1-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna be releasing additional data once we hit that 1-year mark, but if,
Yeah, I just wanted to say then we'll be releasing some data and also talking about the case practice, like what have we learned, what have we seen? So we'll look forward to having that conversation with you.
You should do, Deputy Mayor Williams-Eisen, should, you should do just a real briefing on what you set up. What has happened behind the scenes on the encampments, subway safety, the whole actions around, street homelessness. I told them the other day that they need to do a presentation to show other cities. Deputy Mayor Williams-Eisen and her team, coordination with all of these different services. It is really impressive to see what they accomplished. You don't see it early in the administration, January and February of 2022. I drove around the city taking pictures of encampments. Now I have a problem finding them because of what her team with NYPD and DSS and all these other agencies have done together, Department of Sanitation, and she should really do a presentation to you on what they have done behind the scene.
So, happy Thanksgiving. I imagine Turkey Day is very important to you. One for the chief advisor, I'm wondering, are you fundraising for the Legal Defense Fund, or who is in charge of fundraising for the Legal Defense Fund? And then also for the budget team, like, how can we trust these numbers? I mean, you just added like $6 billion in migrant spending in between June and November, by my understanding. Like, how is that not predicted? Is this just a negotiating tactic with the White House, or are these numbers for real?
Go ahead.
Okay, so legally, I am prohibited from raising funds for the mayor, and we have a mayor who believes in following the law, so I will not be raising any funds for the mayor. And the mayor already explained, we have an excellent compliance team that is in charge of that. So they will do their job. I will pray, because I believe in God.
We both do.
Yes, I believe in God. So I will help by praying and asking God to do his work.
The question about the trusted numbers, and I really need help from all of us here on this, because this is our city, and I'm not quite sure that even some of the electeds are saying this is not a financial crisis. This is not a financial crisis, and we have to be careful. We're not trying to negotiate with Washington. We are trying to say that 140,000 people, 3,000 to 4,000 a month coming here. There is a cost.
A week.
A week. Thank you. There is a cost. So if one wants to dispute that, okay, you should pay $300 instead of $315. Okay, but let's do that argument. But to constantly send out the signal that this is not impacting our city, I just think is wrong, And I think that when you have elected officials looking for political points, instead of making the point that New York City tax dollars should not be going to paying for a national problem. Every conversation should start with that from my elected officials. So we're not trying to use this as leverage. This is costly to the city of New York, and it could be a long-term impact. It's unfair to migrants and asylum seekers, and it's unfair to New York City taxpayers. You should let them work. They want to work.
Jeff, you remember last August, I presented that chart to all of you, okay? Showing, this is the red line, which is what we had forecasted, okay, when the budget was adopted. And right around August, we see a huge spike, a huge deviation from that, okay? All right? And we laid out, we explained our entire model to the rest of the world, okay? How we came up, okay, with those numbers. And if you want us to go over the numbers again, we'll be more than happy to do so. Okay, we did it before with all the editorial boards. We met with them, we brief you, you guys ask questions, okay? We went through the entire review process. So the notion that things didn't change is what changed. This is the path that we forecasted, this is the actual numbers. It's a huge deviation, okay? That's when we change our forecast, okay? Moving from assuming 40 households a day, okay, to 55 a day. And then the per diem went up from what we forecasted initially at $320 a day to $383 a day, okay? These are the things that explain, okay, the significant increase in the cost of the asylum seekers. On top of that, we add one more year, okay? This is what confused a lot of folks, okay? Initially we started with fiscal year 23 and 24, okay? At the end of fiscal year 23, we drop off fiscal year 23. So we have 24, now we have to balance 25. So we have to account for the asylum seeker cost in 25. So it's not just fiscal year 24 that was changed. Okay, we had to update the forecast for fiscal year 24, but we also have to add a new fiscal year. Okay, that's what explains the $6.2 billion additional.
I would also add, Jeff, August 9th, 2023, the man was standing right there. He gave a nice speech for about 20 minutes, then he walked into the rotunda and took questions for about 30 minutes. Wait, Jacques literally did the math, like, per person, so you went over this, you asked questions. I think you're on this video asking questions. So I would just point out, and everybody who covers this, Marsha I know was there, asked questions, Katie was there, I know was there. Huh? You don't have to. But the point is, we've been very clear about these numbers. Nothing has changed. And we gave these briefings to the city council members as well.
Weekly briefing.
Everybody saw these numbers, and everybody wrote about it.
No one should be shocked by this.
Just to be very clear.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, Mr. Mayor. And to
Thank
all of
you.
Two subjects, please. First, on your legal defense fund, can you explain why you need a personal legal defense fund that's separate from the campaign and the city? And also, I read that Vito Pitta is maybe heading the fundraising for that. Is that true, and is that appropriate since he has clients who do business with the city? And then on my second subject, please, what is the status of the so-called Deputy Mayor for Operations list of projects at the FDNY? Who is on that list right now? Is there a list? And is this a necessary thing because of a slow bureaucracy or an example of political interference in fire operations? Sorry, it's a mouthful.
Well, no, first, if I can, just off the top, I really want to thank you for your reporting that you did that really took this secrecy over that I was the only one that was doing my job around the communication with the fire department of saying they look into something. Your reporting, many people came up to me after looking at that reporting and saying, okay, this was going on long before they even asked you. You brought a level of, I think, journalistic integrity to the conversation, because prior to that, there was just this misnomer or this misbelief that my basic service as a public service, there were a whole lot of people that were doing the same thing. Vito is not leading my fundraising. I'm going to hire a fundraiser to carry out that function because I have a city to run, and those who want to reach out, people reached out to our team and said, you know, New York has reached out because they said they want to help. You know, something of this magnitude can go into hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million. And so we want to properly make sure we comply with all the rules, and that's what we're doing. Vito's reached out to COIB. He reached out to all of the decision makers so that after the law was passed last year, that we want to make sure we do it accurately. Who's allowed to contribute? Because not everybody can contribute. So we want to make sure we follow the rules, and that's why we're doing it correctly. But he's not leading the fundraiser, so whoever reported that inaccurately. Deputy Mayor Maria Joshi, you know, 52 miles marathon runner. Want to go into that list thing?
Hi, I'm Mira Zoshi, Deputy Mayor for Operations, and I had never heard, actually, let me rephrase it, I'd never seen the phrase Deputy Mayor DMO list until I saw it in the press recently. The way this administration has handled systemic problems around bureaucracy has been in a report that we issued last year, Blast. And it's really about building, and it applies to everybody who deals with all of our city agencies when it comes to land use and development. It focuses on efficiencies we can find in the traffic mitigation process, in the environmental review process, as well as within DOB and the actual IT that DOB uses to process applications. But fundamentally, it's about coordination between DOB, FDNY, SBS, DOT, Parks, the many agencies that an individual has to go to when they're doing land use development in New York City. There's over 111 recommendations there, and many of them have already been completed. But the point of it is this is an administration about equity, and that's how we think about solving problems, systemic problems. And so we have a system-wide approach that applies to everybody who interfaces with the system.
Can I just quickly follow up with the mayor?
I really want to do my best to.
I'm gonna let you follow up, but if you go back and listen to my campaign speeches, I specifically talked about the bureaucratic, slow movement of execution. And one of the areas I talked about is why is it taking so long for people to get basic sprinkler permits? Now, Deputy Mayor, I think our numbers have increased on permits, allowing people to open their businesses. If you have those numbers, it would be good to share. But we had restaurant owners who put their entire life savings to open their restaurants, paying $30,000, $40,000 a month, and they couldn't get a CFO. We were devastating small business owners. Hotels were open, and they couldn't get a sprinkler inspection. And so when I ran that government must become more responsive and not be so bureaucratic. That's what GSD was about, just get stuff done. And at no time did this administration, and when you look at some of the reporting, it was convoluted. It made it seem like this administration had this specialty list. That was not this administration. This administration said no one should deal with a bureaucratic madness that they were experiencing.
And so that was my follow-up question. Mr. Mayor, I wanted to ask you what you're doing now. I know that times are tight right now in the budget, but some people will complain that, you know, the fire department isn't properly staffed to manage all of these inspections and approvals. So what have you done in your time to make that process move more smoothly, aside from just pushing for particular projects as they pop up?
Yeah, and we have been, with all of these efficiencies that we had to find, when you look at the numbers in comparison, that's why I was asking the deputy mayor about, you're seeing an improvement in filing of permits, Department of Buildings action. You're seeing an improvement because part of the problem was that we didn't raise our expectations. You know, we didn't say, listen, we need to handle, if we want our economy recover, we are expecting us to treat our businesses as a client and not as a burden. There was just this level of, why are you bothering me in this city? And we said no to that. We need to recover our economy. And that means making sure our restaurants can open, our bodegas can open, our hotels can open. That is what we stand for. And we're gonna continue to call for the delivery of services to people who dreaded coming to government because of the bureaucracy.
And if I
Can
could
I
just
also
specifically,
add- oh, sorry.
yeah, just answer that question as well, as Deputy Mayor Joshi said, the Get Stuff Build 111, I mean, these were about business process improvements, but for the fire department, actually just had a briefing on this the other day, it was 18 weeks on average just to get that work done. It's now down to 4 weeks, and that has been done under this administration.
And
So that's a 33% decrease, in the time it takes. They're doing them 33% faster, as well as the Department of Buildings is going through construction, plumbing, and electrical inspections now 4 days within receipt. But again, I wanna emphasize, this is system-wide. That's why we did a system-wide analysis of what the blockades were and came up with the 111 recommendations to implement.
Mira, just to be clear, you're saying the fire department is operating, doing fire inspections for fire alarms 33% faster this year than they did last year?
Yes.
Got it. And DOB is doing these inspections in what, 4 days or something?
Yes.
Right. So Melissa, it is being done not because of a DMO list. It's being done because of a GSD mindset. You know, this is an administration that we're tired of New Yorkers going to agencies and feeling as though they're being burdened because they're asking the agencies to do their job. I saw this too much, and I ran on this, that we're not going to have a city that treats you as a burden. You are a client, you are a customer, and we need to operate as such. And you see the action, the numbers don't lie. And we don't get a list from revenue. Whoever calls us, whoever seeks assistance, we help them. That is what this administration is about.
We're about out of time, so we're gonna go to our last two, JR.
Oh, yeah.
Hey JR, how are you?
I'm well, Mr. Mayor. How are you? Happy Thanksgiving to the team.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could you talk a little bit about the announcement made with you and Governor Hochul giving $95 million in emergency assistance to the NYCHA residents?
That was crucial. When many people received a lifeline during COVID, we left NYCHA behind. And I'll never forget when, during the COVID, it must have been in the beginning, Ingrid, when I was going to NYCHA to give out masks to them. You guys need to go look at those articles. It was like, why are you giving masks to those people? You know, they don't deserve to get masks. It was unbelievable how we were treating NYCHA residents. Yeah.
I actually received a call from two other administrators telling us the mayor has nerves going into NYCHA to give out masks. How dare he? It was reprehensible. I couldn't believe it.
Right.
I said, they're your constituents and they're his constituents also. So he will give masks out in NYCHA.
And so this is a continuation what Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer did about including NYCHA in our housing plan, what we've done with the NYCHA Land Trust. 1 in 17 New Yorkers live in NYCHA. It's a substantial population. And so what the governor, and I take my hat off to the governor, what she partnered with us and the lawmakers, both Majority Leader Andrew Stewart-Cousin, Speaker Carl Hastie, they said, listen, we need to be helping NYCHA that are behind in their rent and helping their NYCHA residents. And that's what we did yesterday. Not only did we identify the money, we fast-tracked to make sure people can get the checks. The worst thing could happen for people to be removed from their houses, their homes. And so kudos to the entire process of how we identify the needs of NYCHA residents and work with them to get the money to assist them. We cannot lose our NYCHA residents in the city, and we are focused on NYCHA I think more than any other administration. And I think the Chelsea project is going to be the way forward in NYCHA of how we can build that infrastructure, that crumbling infrastructure with real capital crises there.
Can I
Yeah.
just add a couple of things to it that the mayor mentioned? With the 1 in 17 New Yorkers living at NYCHA, I don't think there has been a city administration that has been more focused on making sure that we don't just deal with immediate urgent issues across NYCHA developments, but we're making the long-term investments. And so the announcement just a couple of days ago certainly provides immediate relief. That's close to $100 million to support NYCHA residents who fell behind in terms of the rent. But as the mayor mentioned, with the tens of billions of repairs that are needed, given the state of NYCHA, we've also been full speed ahead on the types of tools that will help us turn the corner, whether that's the NYCHA Trust, whether that is PACT, whether that is accelerating the types of capital modernization projects that are necessary. But what's really critical here is that we're doing it with residents at the center. And so one thing for everyone to really pay attention to is the fact that we've just started the voting process, for instance, at Nostrand Houses in Sheepshead Bay. And so keeping the residents at the center of the decisions that affect their lives, while advocating for the state and the federal government to do their part, that's how we think we're going to continue to make the investments that NYCHA residents truly deserve, and they're long overdue.
Last question's gonna be Mona.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, Mona, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, sir. So my question, I actually want to pivot back. We keep on speaking about the homeless population or homeless New Yorker, well, homeless migrants. But I want to pivot and talk about our indigenous or our native homeless New Yorkers. Earlier this year in September, you increased the City FEPS program, which was welcome with those reforms. So my question is twofold. First question is, with these budget cuts, do these budget cuts affect the rental assistance vouchers? And then my second question, Mr. Mayor, is there any data on the number of New York's homeless families who have moved to other parts of the state now that they're finally able to? Thank you.
Yeah, and the reason we were talking about the asylum seekers, because that was the roots of the questions. We have not taken our eyes off of those New Yorkers who are living in the shelter system that are non-migrants and asylum seekers. We're still operating, transitioning them into permanent housing. And Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer, why don't you share some of our FEPS numbers and that whole transition? My understanding, we have the largest participation in the FEPS program in the history of the program. But Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer can go through that.
That's right. I want to leave you with a couple of numbers that demonstrates our commitment to making sure that we're doing everything that we can for the formerly homeless getting into permanent housing. So a couple of statistics. In the fiscal year 23, the first full fiscal year of the mayor's term, we financed close to 2,000 homes for the formerly homeless. Those are permanent homes for the formerly homeless, and that number happens to be the highest on record since we started counting these numbers. And in terms of City FEPS vouchers for permanent housing, that too is an all-time high. It's about 9,000. And so those are ways that we, in addition to building as much housing as possible, and in the previous off-topic, I laid out the numbers for the work that we did in the last fiscal year. But that work is not done though, right, Mayor? So we finance the most in these categories, and we have to do more. And that's why the work that we're doing with the Department of City Planning, for instance, the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity is so critical. The more we build across different neighborhoods, the more we're gonna make a dent in the types of indicators that have for too long plagued New Yorkers, like percentages of rent burden, like the numbers of people who are sleeping in shelters. So we're working on all cylinders: financing, zoning, advocacy at different levels of government, because we have to make the type of progress in this housing crisis, again, that New Yorkers deserve.
Just really quickly, DM, I just wanted to add that we're not taking any cuts to rental assistance. And as you, I'm very excited about the fact that we can now use City for HEP statewide, especially for people who are victims of domestic violence. So we are working with many families right now to get them resettled in other places.
Yeah, that was actually my follow-up question, because we have a lot of families with children, school-age children in shelters, so I was very curious as to, will they be impacted with the budget cuts, as well as how many of these families are actually, moving to other parts of the state, the families.
Yeah, that's why I just love these Tuesdays. We're able to give you long hand information, because if Katie would have wrote the story, she would have probably said we were cutting. And so that's why.
There's still so many questions though.
That's why, first of all, you like talking to me, so you'll never stop wanting to talk to me. Why don't we do a few more before we bounce, okay?
Thanks. To follow up on what Mira said she has never heard, well, two questions. First, the DMO list, she said she's never heard, or she had never heard of it until she saw it in writing in a newspaper account. Had you heard of it before reading about it? And then secondly, have you or your team reported any other campaign or administrative staff to federal investigators aside from Rana Abasova?
So I'm gonna talk about the DMO list. No, I have not heard of a DMO list, and that's why I thought it was so important that we separated that list from that administration, because when you read some of the reporting, it appears as though this was my creation, And anytime you're in the beginning of administration, there's a tendency for people to believe that the actions of previous administration was the actions of the current administration, because normally when we write these stories, we put my face there. And so you may be savvy enough to read through the story, but the everyday New Yorker, they see my face and they see suicide on Rikers Island happened in 2019, but hey, why is Eric's face there? People are connecting things that happened in the past to this administration, and it gives the impression that the actions, the sins of the past is playing out on this administration. So this administration never had a DMO list. We know nothing about a DMO list. I have one deputy mayor of operation, and that's Mira Joshi. If she would have walked in my office and said, hey, I have a DMO list, I am going to say, no, you don't. That is not how we operate of having this. So I want to be very clear. We don't know of a DMO list. We have not created a DMO list. Every New Yorker that comes to me is serviced. Every New Yorker that comes to me is serviced. And talking about the investigation, Council Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, the mayor's direction has been clear, and so has mine. City Hall plays by the rules. If investigators want information from us, we provide it. I've stated previously that we've been proactively cooperative, and SDNY will complete their review. We at City Hall remain focused on running the city. We're not gonna do anything to impede their investigation. We're gonna continue to focus on our work, period.
Correct. Mr. Mayor, just to follow up with the DMO list, I know we're reporting here, but what is
The non-DMO list, got it.
The non-DMO, well, not your administration, the non-DMO list, but the prior administration, when you were then borough president, you just became Democratic nominee for mayor.
Yes.
Did you recommend or contact the administration, the prior administration, to get any other businesses then onto that list, fast track list?
And that's a great, that's a legitimate question. First of all, I want to be very clear. I knew nothing of a list. I knew nothing of a list. And so if ever I contacted the prior administration, anytime as borough president, anytime as state senator, it was to ask them to examine something. I'm not contacting them and say, you have to do this, because I had no authority to do that. So any communications that I had with previous administrations, as all electeds, I want to be clear on this. I don't know if you guys ask of the electeds, do you call agencies to ask to help your constituency? This is what we're supposed to do. And so if I reached out to the previous administration, it's because a constituent reached out to me and stated that I'm having a problem getting this speed bump on my block. I'm having a problem getting my restaurant open. I'm having a problem getting this tree that's ripping up my sidewalk. So as an elected officials, particularly like me, that's on the ground, if a constituent reach out to me, I want to make sure those actions are carried out. I don't know how many thousands in our CAU unit in Borough Hall, I used to do the Speak with the Mayor once a month on Channel 12. People would call in and say, I can't get a light fixed on my block. My role is to tell them, I'm coming to meet you on your block, I'm going to find out the problem, and we're gonna get that light fixed. And so I never called the previous administration to say, can you add this on a list that I didn't know about? But I constantly reach out to administrations on every level to say constituency needs must be resolved. And any elected official that's not doing that is not doing their job.
Last question.
Mr. Mayor.
Mark, you got the last one.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, how are you?
How are you?
Good, good. So I wanted to ask, since the raid at the home of Brianna Suggs, have you spoken to Frank Carone about the investigation? Has he offered any advice? And since we last spoke, has anybody at the administration been approached to or spoken to either the FBI or SDNY?
I didn't understand it.
Oh,
You actually just speak to Frank Carone.
Yes.
Frank is my former chief of staff. I speak with him about a number of things. I don't go into personal conversations.
What about
Who's
the
the other-
investigation?
I'm sorry?
About the investigation?
I don't go into personal conversations. I've said that a million and one times. The personal conversations I have with people, I never go into that. So you could always feel confident when you share personal information with me. I will always keep it a secret between you and I.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to, if I may briefly.
Okay, go ahead. You're welcome.
You're the
Yeah, it didn't work. It didn't work. You're my.
Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.